Welcome to another episode of I Am Nano.
Putting the I in I Am Nano, I am your host, Irfani.
And I am your other host, Monica.
Today, we will be talking about making meat in the lab, not the kitchen, the lab. And the paper we will be discussing today is a great example of how nanomaterials are used in exceptional research.
As we may be aware, meat consumption has been recently associated with adverse environmental impacts. So there's been a trend and a push to go towards a more plant-based diet. But it's not easy to do, especially since meat consumption has been so deeply rooted in our culture for an exceptionally long time, and with good reason. So some scientists thought, instead of making plant-based meat, what about printing meat in the lab?
Yeah, so making meat in the lab sounds very futuristic, but it wasn't even that long ago that we thought making plant-based meat that can bleed like meat was out of reach. And in fact, some companies such as Mosa Meat, based in the Netherlands, aim to produce these lab-grown meats, and they're currently scaling up in production, so they're almost there.
Oh, that's exciting. Hopefully they'll be in our supermarkets soon.
Yeah, for sure. Now, recently, a group of scientists from Osaka University in Japan also conducted similar work that was published in Nature Communications.
Right. So they used 3D technology and cellular precursors to make this artificial meat. So let's start with 3D printing. This technology has evolved significantly over the last few years. We can even 3D print houses.
I know, I've seen people make small gadgets and things using 3D printing, but 3D printed houses is quite surreal.
Yes, it feels very futuristic.
Yeah.
And so this same technology can be used to print biomaterials. In this case, instead of using plastic materials to print, bio inks were used. These biocompatible inks must have properties that allow them to be slightly liquid-like during printing, but must be able to retain their shape afterwards. Now, there are techniques that can improve the outcome depending on the bio ink material used.
Yes, exactly. So now, how do these scientists use 3D printing to make their meat? Steak meat has aligned structures or groups of skeletal muscles formed by muscle fibers that are surrounded by fat and blood capillaries. And the ratio and the location of the muscles, the blood capillaries, and the adipose or the fat tissue really depend on the type of meat and its origin. So, for example, sirloin wagyu contains 46.5% of adipose or fat tissue versus 10.7% in the rump of red meat. That's what makes it taste so juicy and good.
Oh my goodness, the Wagyu beef, so delicious. You're right.
I know. So to start, they must collect edible bovine satellite cells and adipose-derived stem cells from cows. These satellite cells are the precursors to skeletal muscle cells that can later develop to differentiated muscle cells. And the adipose-derived stem cells are extracted from adipose tissue and can differentiate into multiple cell lineages.
Oh my goodness, that's very interesting. So the thing is, I've heard of stem cells. So just to clarify, these are the cells that have the potential to develop into many different types of cells in the body. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's why they are often used in regenerative medicine because they can become so many other cells, depending on what factors are added to promote their differentiation and growth.
Right. Interesting. And so a couple of different pathways happen here. After the bovine satellite cells are taken from cows and separated, they are then incubated in a media containing horse serum to promote their differentiation and growth in order to become muscle cells. For the adipogenic cells, so that fancy terminology we use for fat cells, the adipose-derived stem cells are grown in a 3D culture media containing free fatty acids and transforming growth factors. For the blood cells, They also use adipose-derived stem cells to make the blood cells. Then this is done using horse serum to promote its differentiation.
Mhm. Now that they are able to culture these cells to make the muscle, the blood, and fat cells, they need to essentially assemble them into a meat-like structure using the 3D printing. And so the technique they use is called supporting bath assisted 3D printing, where the bioink is ejected into a bath supporting structure made of materials that can easily be removed from the printed structure. And in this case, they use gelatin or gel and gum because they are liquefied at 37 Celsius, but it's gel-like at room temperature. So gelatin is, quite commonly used in cooking. And for gel and gum, it's another gelling agent that is naturally found in water lilies, but they can also be produced by fermentation with a specific bacteria.
Okay, interesting. So we have the, I guess, vegetarian and the vegan options there with those two. Very nice. And so this injection process, so it's similar to when bakers want to make the fancy jelly cakes with the nice flowers in them. They inject the sweet colored mixture with a shaped needle to make the flower shape inside the clear jelly.
Exactly. That's exactly very similar to what's being done here. So this time, a bioink made of the bovine stem cells, fibrinogen, which is a glycoprotein that is involved in clotting, and a matrigel solution are injected into the supporting bath to make the fibers. However, when they place the resulting fiber in a culture media solution to essentially allow the cells to grow and differentiate, the fiber became a ball. It shriveled up and became a ball, which isn't really good for meat structure.
I don't think so.
No, it's not. So they anchored the two ends of the printed fiber with a needle and then placed it on a silicone substrate before incubating it into a culture media, which successfully kept the fiber intact.
Oh, okay, great. That's fantastic. And so I guess the diameter of the fiber shrank, and it was thought to be because of the decomposition of the fibrin gel by the proteases. So those are the enzymes that break down proteins from the cells. But the good news from the paper is that the cells are also aligned just like how they are naturally found in muscles.
Yeah, so this is great breakthrough. But taking each fiber and then needling them on a silicone platform is not that efficient. It will take a very long time. So they scaled it up by developing a technique called tendon-gel integrated bioprinting, where they use tendon gels to anchor the printed cell fibers. So these act like the needles. And these tendon gels are made of 4% collagen nanofiber that can reversibly change from a solution phase to a gel phase from 4 to 37 Celsius.
Oh, interesting. And so these tendon gels will also be detached from the fibers once they are ready. Cool. And then the researchers observed the resulting printed cell fiber maintained its fibrous shape and showed higher muscle cellular maturation after 3 days.
Yes, and they also printed the fat fibers and the blood capillary fibers successfully. So all of the 3 fibers required to make meat were ready to be assembled like Legos.
Wait a minute. Why can't they just print all of them all together at one time?
Yeah, that'll be the ideal scenario, but because the cells require different differentiation factors and specific media culture, they unfortunately have to be fabricated individually.
Interesting. I see at this time. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So in this case, they tried to mimic a Wagyu beef by looking at its cross-section to determine the proportion of muscle, fat, and blood fibers that make it up. And so these fibers will stack together like the cross-section, and then they use transglutaminase, which is a cross-linking enzyme, to stick them together when they're incubated for 2 days at 4 degrees. And it worked.
Oh, great. Fabulous. Amazing to hear that. And so now, did they fry the meat after? Did they sear it? Did it taste like actual meat?
I wish they did that, but unfortunately, I don't think they tested those aspects of it yet. But still, it's an exciting, promising feat for future lab-grown meats.
What a tasty episode we had today.
All right, that is all the Nano for today. Take care.
And stay curious.